Hello and good afternoon. Thank you for joining our webinar this afternoon. This webinar is entitled ActivInspire in Humanities. In this session, we'll be looking at various interactive examples which have been tried and tested in classrooms around the country, and humanities teachers tell us that they work. Each example uses a different technique which you could replicate in your own classroom using content relevant to your learners. By providing examples on a specific subject, we hope to show you what other humanities teachers are using in their own classrooms. These examples are easy to create yourself, yet effective and meet pedagogical requirements. As a former geography teacher, our very own Samantha Clewes will be hosting today's session. Using her knowledge of ActivInspire, but also her core skills in the classroom, she will be taking us through examples and their importance in learning and teaching within the humanities subject areas. I am Janice Prenstatter, your host for this afternoon, and I will be supporting you, posing your questions, and generally ensuring that you enjoy the session today. When Sam starts the presentation, you are free to ask questions throughout. Please use the chat facility to talk to me directly by finding my name in the drop-down menu. To access chat, remember that you hover over the top of your page, select chat, and this opens up another window for you to type in. All questions and comments will be posed to Sam throughout the session. If you're just joining us now, please take a minute to make sure that you have entered your location and position in the chat box, and also make sure that you're connected fine to both the visual element of the webinar and the audio. And also just familiarize yourself with the WebEx toolbar. Right, Sam, if you'd like to get us started today.
Thanks, Janice. That was a brilliant introduction. One of the things I always like to remind myself is that in terms of humanities, we want to think about where that word comes from. And that word is a derivative of the word human, and it's our study of it, basically our study of us, people, and all the ways in which we interact. And that's throughout every period of history, every corner of the globe. We basically process and document the human experience. In academic terms, the word humanities, or we think of humanities as specific subjects: history, geography, philosophy, religious education, and culture and language. If we take it literally, it's also the study of people, therefore music and art can be involved in that heading as well. So what I want to do today is take you through a variety of examples of lessons that fit into that heading, and emphasize how we can get our students to think about those subjects. So while I've been talking, hopefully you'll have read the question that's on the screen. And I'm wondering, I did see the chat box pop up there, if anyone has actually answered it. So I'm just going to open there and say, Janice, has anyone said who they would like to go exploring with, or can you tell us who you would like to go exploring with?
Hi, Sam. We've actually had a couple people who have said Christopher Columbus, funnily enough.
Okay, that's a great one. So I've just typed that onto the screen there. Now, if I was in a classroom situation, I would ask all my students this question, and I may get them to write it up on the board, or write it up for them, or better still get them to do that. But what I want to do is to use that information to form patterns, to pick out trends, and further my understanding of what my students know. Now, the example of that I've used is a very simple picture and text here with the question, and it's actually telling me a lot of information about my class. It might tell me that some of them are sentimental, that they want to go on traveling with their families, their boyfriends, their dog. It may tell me that a lot of them know a lot of celebrated explorers because they've brought up words like Christopher Columbus. But by asking the question, I'm gaining my class's understanding. Now, why not just ask the question? Well, simply, the activity wouldn't change, but the perception would. I need to give my students some focus and structure. So by adding the picture, by typing the question up onto the screen, I'm allowing them that little bit of extra time to think while I'm talking. I've given them some structure in terms of what am I actually looking for. So we're not just talking about who you want to go on holiday with. We're emphasising that word explore. And I've given them a dedicated space to write in as well. So created that focus in my classroom. If I continue on the theme of creating focus and using pictures to do this, I can look at different activities. So sticking with the idea of pictures, I want to look at the patterns and trends that we can discuss when we talk about the seasons. Now, I'm sure that at some point in all your teaching careers or even your school career, you will have seen a picture or lesson activity like this. Using the images, I want my students to tell me all the things they know about a particular season, one at a time. Now, their responses shouldn't be limited to the weather. They could be about anything, the activities that they personally do, the animals they'll find, festivals, etc. What I'm aiming to do is, again, use the seasons as a way to show my students all the links and patterns that form when we think about them as one big concept. How are things connected? Now, I've used a piece of translucent paper on top of the images to record the answers that my students have provided me. You can see I've put some of these on there already. And the paper itself is set to contain anything, meaning that as I write new things up, if I do this on here, apologies, I'm writing with a mouse, that they stay contained and therefore attached to the paper as I move it around the screen. Now I'm going to show you how to make a container on the next example. But one of the best reasons for using a container is not only can I record all my students' answers in one place, but I could also take them off as and when I choose. So once I've done the initial activity with my class and I've listed everything they can tell me about the seasons, different things they want to take further, I'm going to use the layers within the ActivInspire software to take this lesson a bit further. I just remove these pictures off to the side here. You'll see that underneath I've hidden more images that we can start to classify. Now, the reason that I would do this is not only to reinforce my lesson and get the students more involved, but it allows me to check their understanding. Have they grasped the differences between the seasons and how things change according to that particular weather pattern? So I can pull out an image and think, not sure where that would be. That might be spring or it could be autumn, because we've not quite got all leaves on the trees. Pull another one out, can test their understanding. Now, I think that mountain might be summer, and I can use another one that says holidays. Well, where would holidays sit? Holidays might be in summer, or it could be up here in winter. And we can start to break down some of the misconceptions. We can start to see patterns that occur. Does everyone have holidays in the winter, or is that just a school thing because it's relevant to my students? Perhaps they have their summer holidays with their parents down here. So you can get to see that I'm emphasising and reinforcing all those messages as I'm going through. One of the best things, obviously, about using this type of idea is that I also get to use my students' thoughts and feelings. It's a great way of giving my students ownership over that particular lesson. And it was the same with the previous example as well. If we move forward then, I'm going to show you another way to use containers, and this time show you how to create them as well. On this particular example, I've set the images, again, to contain anything. And by selecting the picture, I can resize it. And we can see here that we've got a picture of central London. And I'm going to, again, ask my students, what do they know? Get their opinions, get their ideas. So I'm going to use my pen. I'm just going to quickly write something up. Again, apologies, I am writing with a mouse. So if I just type in or write in London, so we'll imagine that my students are doing this. The best bit about the container, remember, is I can put everything I want on there and I can resize it. So as you can see, the objects or the writing that I put on my container also resize with it. meaning that I can do multiple things on a page. Less work for me, which is always a good thing, but still getting across that big idea to my students. So how do I set up a container? Well, let's take this picture here. I'm going to bring it in. It doesn't really matter what size it is. I'm just going to resize it just for our benefit so we can see what it is. So here we are. We have a picture of Ayers Rock. And the first thing you need to do is to select it. You can see that I've selected it here because I have my marquee handles around the side and I have my object edit menu visible. I go into my menu and I'm going to select the property browser. That brings up another menu down the side of my page. And I'm going to scroll down to find the folder entitled Container. You can see it's already open here. The first one says Can Contain. You'll see it says Can Contain Nothing. What I want to do is to change that to Can Contain Anything. So I'm going to change that Can Contain Anything, and I'm going to close down my property browser. And that's it. All I have to do now is I'm going to type, and you can see that anything I put onto my screen on that picture is contained within it and will move as one. So it could be text or writing, both of them are contained there as I move them around. And it was the same on the previous option as well. So the container feature used in two different ways. Now I have to say that I really love this technique because it allows me to show those big concepts, bring to light patterns on a large scale without compromising my lesson or having to make loads and loads of pages to get across the same point. Okay, I'm going to take a step back, and actually we're going to take a step back in time. I want to show my students how things have changed, what has changed, and the impact it has on the lives of the people. Now these are all really good, solid humanities questions to ask. So we're going to start from the current, and we're going to look at what things are like now, and I'm going to ask my students to observe what they can see, maybe write up or type up what we can see on the picture, just have the discussion. And I'm going to use the feature of the Translucency Slider to show how things looked in the past as well. Now by selecting my picture, I can bring up my menu again, and the fourth one in is the Translucency Slider. So let's see how things used to look. Okay, it's a really simple tool, and I hope you agree it works really well to show concepts like this. For me, the key here is the discussion that takes place around this activity. It could be a really high-level discussion looking at social implication of the changes between primary and now the tertiary sector jobs. Or it could be something really basic, like just noticing that the tree is different because we happen to have taken the photo in different seasons. The impact, however, is very visual and gives our students something concrete to look at the differences, how things have changed, just by using that Translucency Slider. Now we've looked at Translucency Slider before in our webinar series, but just as a reminder, remember it is one picture sat on top of the other, and you are making the top picture translucent. Okay, let's go in a different direction for a minute. Let's look at activities that are drag and drop, that our students can come up and interact with us. Here you can see I have an activity for the water cycle. Now I could use this as a starter to explain the water cycle or as a plenary to assess understanding. But essentially, either way, we're asking students to move the text into the right space. Now, although there is a correct answer, what I want my students to do is to understand how one process in the cycle affects the next. Therefore, I haven't used containers here. I want a little bit more from my students. So I could select one of these words and ask them to put it into the right box. Hopefully, we would be getting the rest of the class involved, saying yes, no, this way, that way. Now, one of the cool things that I have set on this page is a tooltip. And these are words that you can see pop up when I hover over the right bit of my page. And they're like little tricks, little tips for my students. They just flash very quickly. You saw it there. I need to find it again. There we are, condensation. Just flashes up. Tooltips are really useful to support students and those that are struggling. I'm going to show you how to create a tooltip on your page. You may have noticed in the past that when you hover over an icon in ActivInspire, it actually tells you what that is. That's a tooltip. That's exactly what we're doing for our students. To create a tooltip then, we need to select something that is near where we want to create that tip. So I'm going to put rain here, so I've selected my raining clouds. We're going into our property browser again. Remember, that's into your object edit menu and property browser. But this time we're looking for the folder marked label. You can see it's just above the previous one, container. There are two steps to this. Firstly, we need to type in what we would like to reveal, so the caption. So in this instance, I'm going to type rain. I'm just going to quickly change the font size as well because that's far too small for me, so I'll put 24 in. And now we want to change the behaviour down here to a tooltip. Now you can see that there is also a delay here, so it may be that students have to find these and you might want to set a 5-second delay, so there's some thinking time involved. I'm not going to do that in this instance, but I am just going to close that down. Once I've closed that down, you'll see when I hover over it, there you go, that tooltip comes straight up as soon as I hover over that particular object. So really, really neat trick, really good for supporting those students that may struggle with things. Okay then, keeping on the idea of drag and drop, remember we don't have to make our pages complicated. It could just be as simple as labelling things. Now in this instance I've used countries, but it could be anything that you are focusing on with your class. All we're asking our students to do is select the name and drop it onto the correct country. Now for this particular page, just to make it a little bit more exciting, I have added a web link in. Again, web links is something that we've covered in previous sessions, and Janice is going to talk to you at the end about where you can access all our previous webinars. But if I select this web link, you can see it takes me to France's official website, and there you go, it's just bringing everything up. You can see here that I can go and discover what's happening in France right now, where it is in the world, how to invest, lots of different things that we might be looking at as a class within France. I'm just going to go back to my flip chart. Janice, do we have any questions at this stage?
No, Sam, I think we're okay. I had a couple comments. People are enjoying what you're showing.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay then, we'll keep going. And I'm going to stick with the drag and drop theme, but this time I want to take it a little bit further and look at thinking skills. Now, I hope that you're all familiar with the principles of thinking skills, but if not, the general idea is to get our students to think, to discuss what they are seeing, to justify their responses, and ultimately build some life skills, all the while completing our curriculum. Now, this particular thinking skills is a Diamond 9 activity. The idea is that the students have 9 statements. They're all true and about one particular topic. So in this instance, we've got, why did Hitler blitz Britain? And at the start of the activity, the students may have these statements on their desks and they're asked to place them into a diamond, with the most important statement, in their opinion, at the top in this A position, and the least important statement right at the bottom in the E position. Now, I'd get the students to do that on their desks, rearrange them, and to write a justification for their top and bottom options. So most important at the top, least important at the bottom. Once they've done that, I might ask them to complete the second activity as a pair or a group to redo the whole thing from scratch, but to see if each student has put them in the same place. Now, as a teacher, we're listening to the conversations that are inevitably going to happen when we're doing this, because every student has a different opinion. So we're walking around the classroom, listening to those conversations and understanding how and what our students are thinking about. Did they think that the same reason was above at the top, or the same reason was at the bottom? Where did they put the rest? Once we've done it as individuals and as a group, and we've had those discussions, I want to bring it back to the board, and that's where this template comes in, because I've hidden the 9 statements on my page, and I can bring them up one at a time and actually ask each group where they placed it and why. So if I went to group A first, and they said, oh, we put that in on the B line, miss, so I can say the primary reason was to force Britain to surrender. Now, it might not happen, but hopefully as I go round groups B, C, D in my classroom, that it gets moved. So it might be right at the top for one group. It could be down here for another. What I want to do is get each group to justify why they put it in that particular situation. And this will continue happening as we move on with all the options. I should be able to see the different opinions forming, and each group will have to continue to justify their choices and fight for their choice. Now, it's a really brilliant activity, and it's absolutely fascinating to see how students think. I saw a few comments there, Janice. Would anyone like me to explain that activity?
No, Sam, I think we're okay. You probably see comments coming in because I'm typing for one person who was unable to join the audio, so I'm just doing a little typing commentary as we're going along as well. But I think everybody's happy right now.
Perfect, thank you. So, continuing on that theme, when we look at the wider social sciences and humanities, we often have to address issues that some students, and even maybe ourselves, find difficult to discuss. We all have varying opinions of what should be the right, in inverted commas, answer. Our cultural background, upbringing, our religion all play a part in our opinions. So when we're trying to work with 30 individuals on this and not bring in our personal bias, it can actually be really difficult. Here, I've created a template using the tools found in the resource browser under Lesson Building Tools. Remember, to access these, your resource browser sits on your toolbar, and you can open up, and I've just used the ones under Lesson Building Tools, and in this instance I was looking for a scale, so I've brought in the scales that you can see here, but it could be anything that you find in these options. I don't want to give my students any context at this moment. What I want to do is just pose the question on screen. How does this picture make you feel? So I can go around my students and activate that vote. If I had learner response systems, I could use them. And I'm going to ask some individuals to justify their choices if I want to widen that conversation. It may be, for example, that students might have a vested interest in elephants, might have been on a safari, or have a family member that works in a zoo. Anyway, once the discussion has occurred, I can reveal the context of my lesson by changing the page. My class will now discover that my objective is actually to look at animals in captivity, but I wanted to gauge what their feelings and thoughts were before I went forward. But remember, I could have changed the pictures to be of a mother with a newborn baby, and then shown that that baby was born through IVF. Or I could have shown a picture of a very sick young person and moved on the discussion to talk about euthanasia. The idea here is to gauge the audience, to challenge them, to think about their opinions. Where do they come from? Is everything always black and white? Okay, I'm going to go back again a little bit and look at another really simple idea. in this case using sound. Each of the pictures on this particular example have a sound file added to it. Now, you can learn how to do this by visiting our ActivTips section on PrometheanPlanet.com, and again, Janice can tell you where to find those later. But by adding the simple element means we create a page with that extra dynamic.
The flowers make coconut seeds. Coconut flowers bloom.
Each sound file tells you something else about that particular cycle, allows you the time as a teacher to discuss it with your class and to show how the cycle links into the next part.
A coconut seed falls to the ground.
Now, this particular flipchart page was downloaded from Promethean Planet and was part of a flipchart written by our Young Explorer partnership. It was part of a series of 90 flipcharts written in collaboration with National Geographic, and we're going to talk about this partnership more in about 3 examples. So my last 2 examples to give you are both easy tricks of the software to maximize student involvement. The first is using the container feature we discussed earlier on objects that are set off the page, as you can see here. This way, I can bring in particular activities one at a time. I can discuss them with my students by writing up their notes, and I can take them back off again. I have also included a web link to the GCSE bite-sized page in this example as well, so that if possible, I could have gone to the internet and I could have stopped and reviewed the information at any point. The reason I wanted to show you this example, however, is actually not for the trick of the container. We've already looked at that. But for the idea that you can run your whole lesson from one page by setting information off the page, as I've done here. You don't have to create long and complicated messages, flipcharts to get your messages across. My final example then is using Magic Ink. Now, this example was originally created for the BET show, the British Education Trade Show, and I can use either the Translucency Slider or Magic Ink. I'm going to use Magic Ink. What I want to do is transport you back in time. Here we have the field of the trenches that the soldiers fought in World War I. By using Magic Ink, I select it here, I can actually bring in the soldiers in that exact trench and reveal what it was like for them, literally bringing them back from the past. Now, I would get my students to do this. I'm just going to select a bigger one because I want to show you it all. But you can see that it matches, the trenches match, the pictures match. There we go. Now, the images came from another partnership that we have, which is the Imperial War Museum. And along with the National Geographic, as discussed, there are also several other partnerships that also support the humanities themes. They include NatureWorks, BP, the Smithsonian Museum, and the Royal Geographic Society. All of these partnerships have created flipcharts and provide imagery copyright-free for you to use in your classroom. And of course, they're all linked to the curriculum. This is where I'm actually going to leave you for tonight, and I'm going to pass you back to Janice so that she can show you where to find all these amazing resources and tell us a little bit more about where to go for the past webinars and the ActivTips sessions. Thank you very, very much for listening tonight, and I will hopefully see you on another webinar shortly. Thanks, Janice.
Hi, Sam. Just as we finish up, you might want to just jump in and just type a little bit in as we chat along for the last couple of pages here. It was absolutely fantastic. Some really, really great ideas that I think people will be able to take away and use. So remember that some of the simplest ways of using interactive whiteboard technology excuse me, can also be the most effective. Sometimes adding in extra levels of interactions can distract from the learning and not necessarily aid it. So to finish off, I would just like to give you some quick information on where you can obtain further support. So of course, the first place that we always direct people to is Promethean Planet. So it is a great starting place for advice and ideas on how to use ActivInspire and your interactive whiteboard with learners. Here you can search, view, and download thousands of teacher-created resources that are shared on this website for free use in classrooms. And the great thing is that I could take somebody else's content that they've spent hours creating, download it onto my own computer, and then just change it slightly to suit how I want to use it with my class. So I don't have to use it exactly as they created it. In the resources drop-down menu, there is also a quick link to Humanities. So if you go to the Resources tab at the top and click on it, there'll be a drop-down that opens, and you can click on one that is actually for Humanities, or the equivalent if you don't use the UK website. So clicking that will show you that there is an actual fact 12,014 resources in the Humanities area available for you to use on Promethean, for you to obtain from Promethean Planet. Also, by using the advanced search, which you can see just there at the right of the Planet page, you can narrow down the selection of resources available even further by selecting subject and specific age ranges. The themes area is another great place to find related subject material, including blogs and web links on specific topics. Themes such as colonial America, conservation and sustainability, Black history, World War II, and discussion topics like caring for pets, Earth Day, and explorers are all covered. Many of the techniques that Sam spoke about today on this session, you can find out how to do yourself by watching the active tips. Active tips are found on Promethean Planet under professional development and then selecting learning. You can also find the active tips on YouTube. So if you do a search on YouTube for active tips, you'll also be able to find a selection of the active tips there. All of the recordings, this recording as well as all the recordings that we've done from previous webinars are up and available on YouTube for anybody to view. So what we will do after this session is make sure that all of you who attended are sent a direct link to the recording on YouTube. And when you go there, it'll take you to our playlist and you can view any of the other selection of ideas that we have. This one was specifically subject focused on humanities, but we do have ones that are a little bit broader topics on basic use of the software and more advanced use of the software. So finally, we would just like to thank you for joining our webinar today. If you have any questions about today's session, Sam is going to turn the page in a minute and put up our email details. So you can just email Sam and I any questions that you do have, and we would be very happy to help you out as best we can. We do also have a Twitter handle, and on our Twitter handle we are doing our best effort to try and share hints, tips, ideas, just other places where you can go to get more support and advice and talk to people on how they're using these technologies in their classroom. So we would love for you to follow us at the @Promethean UK and I Twitter handle if you are a Twitter user. So thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope to see you on another webinar soon. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Sam.